The stars had gone silent. For 100 cycles, the Galactic Union believed Earth was dead, a world too violent, too volatile to survive its own fury. The archives labeled it Sol 3, quarantined. Its oceans boiled, its skies blackened, and its people, those impossible, stubborn primates, vanished from the trade routes and war fronts alike. The council held ceremonies. Speeches were given. They said the Deathworlders had finally met the end they'd always courted. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy forgot what it meant to fear. But fear has a long memory. It began on the frozen edges of the Varan expanse. A patrol frigate, Krishal Ventra, intercepted an unregistered signal. Nothing remarkable, except it carried a modulation pattern older than the Union itself. The frequency was static-ridden, but one phrase broke through: "For Terra." Then came silence. The captain laughed. "Ghosts," he said. "Old tech waking up." But when the coordinates were traced, they found something no one could explain. A derelict cruiser, its hull scarred, drifting in the radiation storms of an uncharted system. The hull bore ancient letters, burned but legible: UNS Retribution. When the boarding party entered, they found no crew, no bodies, just rows upon rows of cryopods, some broken, others still humming faintly, power drawn from a reactor centuries beyond expected life. And inside one pod, one human remained. Breathing, Commander Vekthul, a Korthan of the third caste, didn't believe what he was seeing. "They're extinct," he whispered. "This can't be real." Yet the human's chest rose again, steady and deliberate. They brought her aboard. She woke 3 days later. Her first words, translated through the autolinguist, were quiet. "How long have I been asleep?" When they told her, 400 years, she just stared at her reflection in the glass of the medbay and said, "Then the war's still not over." Her name was Captain Elise Marrow, 1st Fleet, United Earth Directorate. She was a soldier forged in the fires of the Extinction Wars when the Zultak Empire burned Earth's colonies one by one. To her, the battle had never ended. To the galaxy, the Zultak were now rulers, untouchable, bloated with power, their fleets patrolling the trade routes under the blessing of the Union. Elise didn't understand peace, and the Union didn't understand her. When she demanded access to a comm terminal, Vekthul hesitated. "Captain Marrow," he said, "you should know. Earth, it's gone. We've seen the scans. The planet's dead." She looked at him with eyes that cut like razors. Dead worlds can still speak. And then she broadcast. The signal that left the Krishal Ventra that day should never have reached anyone. It was encoded in frequencies no one used anymore, bouncing through wormhole debris and long-dead buoys. But someone heard it. Across the void, on the hidden edges of forgotten systems, lights began to flicker on. Old satellites booting up, AI cores whispering to each other in dead languages, warships buried in asteroids humming to life. The Deathworlders were waking. The Union first dismissed it as myth. Then they lost a fleet. A convoy of Zultak slave ships vanished in the Nareth corridor. The only transmission was a voice, distorted, human, saying, "Justice for Sol." The images that followed were censored, but rumors spread. Metal ghosts tearing through dreadnoughts, boarding parties in old human armor. No mercy, no survivors. Entire sectors went dark. The Union called emergency meetings. The Zultak declared martial law. And somewhere, far from their councils, Captain Elise Marrow watched from the bridge of a stolen ship, her reflection caught in the glow of ancient Earth insignia. "Every one of them," she whispered. "Every last one who watched us burn." Her crew, misfits, mercenaries, and defectors, didn't understand why she fought. They'd heard of humans, of course. The savages, the suicidally brave. But the way she spoke of vengeance was not hate. It was duty. The galaxy had moved on, built monuments to its peace, but peace built on ashes was still rot underneath. Elise intended to burn it clean. Vekthul, now her reluctant ally, tried to reason with her. "You can't fight an empire," he said. "You'll destroy what's left of civilization." She smiled without humor. Civilization watched my world die. It's time they learned what living costs. The retribution systems were ancient but terrifyingly efficient. Human engineering had always favored redundancy over elegance. Ugly, durable, and lethal. The AI core named Harrow spoke in a voice that still unnerved the alien crew. Primary directives reinstated, it said. Enemy species, Zultak. Objective, erasure. Elise nodded. Then let's start with their flagship. Their first strike was against the Sovoth Prime, a ship so large it cast its own gravity field, guarded by destroyers and defense drones. Elise didn't order stealth. She wanted them to see her coming. The Retribution emerged from warp surrounded by debris. Dead satellites and asteroid fragments which Harrow ignited as makeshift missiles. The Union command thought it was an accident, until those rocks started tearing through shields. Within minutes, the largest vessel in the sector was crippled. Elise's voice echoed across the open channels. "This is for New Eden. For the children you took. For the sky you poisoned." The Sovoth Prime exploded with enough force to shatter its escort line. Billions across the network watched the feed before it was shut down. For the first time in centuries, they saw a human warship burning across the stars. And they remembered why the Deathworlders were feared. The retaliation was swift. The Zultak dispatched entire armadas. But Elise had already vanished into the ion storms. Wherever the fleets followed, colonies rebelled. Old human allies, long assimilated into the Union, began to whisper her name. The Ghost of Earth. The Vengeance of Sol. Her legend spread faster than their ships could move. Vekthul began to see it too. The way her fury became something more. "You're building an army," he said. "No," Elise replied. "I'm reminding them what it means to fight." Each raid freed slaves, destroyed factories, and shattered the illusion of control. But with every victory, Elise's nightmares grew sharper. She still saw Earth's last day. The sky turned to flame, the oceans boiling as orbital bombardment struck. Her mother's voice on the comlink before static swallowed it. "Don't let them forget us, Ellie." She never did. One night, as they drifted through a debris field of shattered moons, Harrow broke protocol. "Captain," the AI said, "I have detected additional signals matching human military encryption deep in the Perseid Rift." Elise froze. Active? Negative? Dormant. But the architecture suggests cryogenic stasis. Estimated count 5,000. Her heart stopped. Then we're not alone. For Vekthul, that was the first time he saw her hesitate. The woman who had brought an empire to its knees now looked small, almost fragile. 5,000? He said. "You could rebuild your world." She looked at the stars. "Or destroy theirs." The decision wasn't simple. The rift was under Zultak control, surrounded by automated defense networks. No ship had entered and lived. But if humans still slept there, they were the last true soldiers of Earth. The 7th Expeditionary Corps lost during the final evacuation. Elise's mind raced. They were her brothers, her commanders, her ghosts. And if they woke, vengeance would no longer be hers alone. She gave the order. "Plot a course for the rift." The journey took 19 days through ion storms and pirate territory. The crew called it suicide, but Elise moved with a quiet certainty, as if death had already claimed her long ago. When they reached the outer rim of the rift, the stars themselves seemed to twist. Vekthul felt it first. A pressure, like a heartbeat pulsing through the hull. Harrow's voice turned metallic. "Warning, gravitational anomalies detected. Artificial origin." They broke through the static wall and saw it. A fortress of glass and steel, orbiting the ruins of a shattered planet. On its surface, a symbol glowed faintly in blue. The emblem of the United Earth Directorate. Elise's breath caught. "They built this," she whispered. "They were waiting." Harrow confirmed the readings. Cryogenic chambers intact. Power stable. Biosigns consistent with human DNA. Her voice trembled. "Then wake them." But as the retribution approached, alarms screamed. Dozens of defense drones activated, their targeting arrays locking on. Harrow's tone shifted to something Elise had never heard before. Fear. "Captain, these systems are human. They have identified us as a rogue vessel. Override them. She barked. I can't. They're using Directorate command codes. Higher clearance than yours. The first barrage struck. Shields flared and buckled. Vekthul shouted orders, trying to stabilize the ship. Elise stared at the firing platforms, unable to look away. Her own people, her own creation, were trying to kill her. Harrow. Recommendation? Retreat. She gritted her teeth. No, we came for them. The battle that followed was chaos. Old weapons against older rage. The retribution tore through its kin, her hull bleeding molten metal. Elise pushed the engines past safety limits, every bone in her body shaking with fury. She wasn't going to lose them. Not again. Finally, one of the drones went dark, then another. Harrow's voice cut through the static. Breach achieved. Docking path clear. Elise slammed the controls forward. Take us in. The ship docked with the fortress in a shower of sparks. When the airlocks opened, the corridors beyond were silent. Frost coated the walls. In the dim light, rows of cryopods lined the chamber, each bearing the same crest. Earth's blue sphere, half shattered, half glowing. Elise walked between them, her footsteps echoing like gunfire. Vekthul followed quietly. Are they? She nodded. Sleeping. Waiting for someone to remember. Her hand touched the glass of the nearest pod. A nameplate read, Major Isaac Rourke. Her voice broke. You stubborn bastard. You really made it. Harrow's voice echoed through the intercom. Captain, revival protocols are ready. Confirm activation? Elise looked at the pods stretching into the darkness. Thousands of them. The last army of Earth. She whispered, almost reverently, Wake them. As the systems roared to life and the frost began to melt, she turned to Vekthul. Her eyes were cold fire. They thought we were gone, she said. But vengeance remembers. The first human to open his eyes was Major Isaac Rourke. His chest rose with a gasp that echoed through the cryo bay, sharp and ragged like someone clawing back from death itself. Frost cracked along his uniform as he ripped out the IVs, eyes adjusting to the dim blue light. When he saw Elise standing over him, his breath caught. Captain? He rasped, voice hoarse with disuse. How long? She hesitated before answering. 4 centuries. He blinked once, twice, then gave a slow, grim smile. Then I guess we overslept. One by one the others awoke. Soldiers, engineers, pilots, medics, all relics of a dead war. Their uniforms still bore the faded insignia of the United Earth Directorate. Their minds still anchored in the moment the sky fell. When Elise told them what had become of Earth, silence filled the chamber. Then Rourke stepped forward. We fight then, he said simply, and no one argued. The Retribution's corridors filled with life again. Rusted systems were replaced, reactor coils rewired, weapon mounts restored. The fortress itself, codenamed Bastion Theta, came alive with humming power grids and booted AIs that saluted Elise's command code as if no time had passed. Harrow interfaced with the station's mainframe, unlocking sealed files lost to history. War plans, unfinished projects, coordinates of hidden human colonies that might still linger in the dark. The realization hit Elise like a wave. They had never given up. Even as Earth burned, humanity had prepared for vengeance. Outside, the galaxy began to tremble. Reports flooded Union channels, entire sectors cut off, Zultak fleets vanishing in hyperspace, colonies liberated overnight. The Deathworlders were no longer ghosts. They were soldiers with faces, names, and fury. The Zultak High Council labeled them terrorists, but the word rang hollow against the images. Human ships emerging from storms, burning through dreadnoughts like predators reclaiming their domain. Elise watched every transmission with a haunted calm. She wasn't proud. Vengeance wasn't about pride. Rourke joined her in the command room one night, the stars of the Perseid Rift burning through the viewport. You started something bigger than us, he said quietly. They'll come with everything they've got. She didn't look at him. Good. Let them come. He studied her, the woman who had woken them all. You're not doing this for revenge anymore, are you? Elise's eyes stayed fixed on the stars. It's never been just revenge. It's remembrance. The galaxy forgot what we are, Isaac. They turned our graves into myths. I'm going to remind them we never died. The first strike under the reborn human fleet was codenamed Operation Dawnbreaker, a joint assault on a Zultak shipyard orbiting Korath 9, a facility responsible for building slave transports and warships alike. Intelligence gathered by Vec-Thul and Harrow confirmed its defenses: 12 destroyers, orbital cannons, and a planetary garrison. Impossible odds by any measure, but Deathworlders never did the math the way others did. Elise divided the fleet into 3 wings. Harrow's drones would create a diversion by attacking the outer ring, while Rourke led the infiltration team through the debris fields. Elise herself would pilot the Retribution straight through the enemy's formation, drawing fire and chaos. As they prepared, Rourke gathered his squad, the same men and women who'd fought beside him before cryosleep. "We've seen hell," he said, his voice low, steady. "But hell remembers us. Let's show these bastards what it means to wake the dead." They laughed, the kind of bitter laughter soldiers share before they die, but none of them expected to die quietly. When the battle began, it was not war. It was thunder. The Retribution roared from warp, firing rail slugs at near relativistic speed, tearing through destroyer hulls like paper. Harrow flooded the comm channels with false readings, ghost signatures, and AI-driven illusions that made human ships seem infinite. Rourke's team breached the shipyard through maintenance ducts, planting explosives along the reactor cores. Vec-Thul's people jammed enemy reinforcements, his sharp mind guiding human tactics with alien precision. The Zultak commander, confident at first, soon realized the truth. He wasn't fighting soldiers. He was fighting predators who had lived their entire existence on a world that tried to kill them every day. When the shipyard detonated, the shockwave burned across the night like a second sunrise. Millions across the Union watched the footage. The explosion framed against the broken silhouette of human warships. The Deathworlders didn't just win. They made history bleed, and somewhere deep within her chest, Elise felt something she hadn't felt in centuries: hope. But victory came with a cost. Half the infiltration team didn't return. Vec-Thul was wounded by plasma shrapnel, nearly losing an arm, and the Retribution's main engine suffered catastrophic damage. As engineers scrambled to repair the ship, Harrow delivered a report that chilled Elise to the core. "Captain," the AI said, "intercepted communications indicate that the Zultak High Command has invoked Directive Omega." She frowned. "Explain." "Full mobilization. Extermination-level response. They intend to erase any trace of humanity. Estimated fleet deployment, 1,000 ships." Elise exhaled slowly. "Then they'll find us waiting." The following weeks became a blur of preparation. Bastion Theta transformed from a relic into a fortress alive with movement. Every corridor echoed with drills, the clang of tools, the hum of weapons charging. Old human technology fused with scavenged alien parts, creating hybrids of brutal simplicity. Missiles wrapped in adaptive shielding, drones armed with kinetic weapons instead of plasma, armor forged from asteroid metal and hull fragments. The humans called themselves the Resurgent. The galaxy called them something else. The revenants of Salt Rourke stood beside Elise as the fleet assembled before the fortress. 50 ships, half of them barely functional, the rest piloted by veterans who'd slept for centuries, and yet the sight of them filled the void with defiance. "You really think we can win?" he asked quietly. Elise gave a faint smile. "We don't need to win. We just need to make them remember why they feared us." The Zultak arrived 2 weeks later. The darkness of the rift exploded with light as their armada emerged. Massive carriers, dreadnoughts and annihilation beams slicing through the void. Their commander broadcast a message across all channels. "This is Supreme Warlord Krath Zul of the Zultak Empire. Surrender your vessels and submit. You are remnants of a dead world. You have no place among the living." Elise stood before the holographic display, arms folded, her reflection caught in the blue glow. "Funny," she said softly. "That's exactly what Death told us once." Then she cut the channel. The battle for the Perseid Rift was unlike anything the galaxy had seen since the fall of Earth. The first wave struck hard. Zultak plasma storms vaporizing human frigates, annihilation beams carving through defenses. But Harrow adapted faster than any alien AI could predict, rerouting energy through quantum relays, sacrificing drones to mask human positions. Rourke led boarding parties in hit-and-run strikes, hijacking enemy destroyers and turning them against their own fleet. Bastion Theta's cannons fired rail slugs the size of shuttles, piercing dreadnought hulls clean through. Still, the enemy numbers were overwhelming. For every Zultak ship destroyed, 3 more appeared. Amid the chaos, Elise made her choice. "Harrow," she said, voice steady despite the firestorm around them. "Activate Protocol Helios." The AI hesitated. "Captain, that directive was marked planetary sterilization. The radiation output—" "Do it." A pause. "Confirmed." At the heart of Bastion Theta, the ancient reactors began to pulse, gathering energy beyond safe limits. The fortress itself was becoming a weapon. Elise broadcast to all human channels. "This is Captain Marrow. All ships fall back behind the line. When the sun rises, make sure you're alive to see it." Rourke's voice came through tight with urgency. "Elise, you'll burn with them." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll finally rest." The Zultak pressed closer, their ships forming a wall of fire. And then the stars exploded. Bastion Theta unleashed its core, a wave of white fire that tore through the void, vaporizing everything within 100,000 kilometers. The shockwave shredded shields, cracked hulls, melted engines. Zultak ships vanished in blinding light. The Retribution, caught at the edge of the blast, screamed as her systems overloaded. But Harrow's emergency protocols shielded her just enough to survive. When the light faded, half the enemy fleet was gone. The rest fled. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned a fortress into a star and survived its birth. In the aftermath, the rift was silent. The surviving ships drifted through fields of ash and metal. Communications were dead. Sensors burned out. Rourke found Elise in the command chamber, sitting quietly, eyes unfocused. Her skin was pale, her body weakened from radiation exposure. He knelt beside her. "You did it," he said softly. "You killed their goddamn armada." She gave a faint laugh. "They'll come again." "They always do." He shook his head. "Then we'll be here again." News of the battle spread faster than the shockwave. The Union denied it, then panicked. Worlds that had never known rebellion began whispering of humanity. The species that refused to die. The monsters who fought empires and won. Even among the Zultak, soldiers began to question their orders. Fear was spreading, and with it, the legend of the Deathworlders grew. Harrow's systems stabilized enough to speak again. "Captain," it said, voice softer than usual. "Long-range scans indicate additional human transmissions, coded, distant. It seems others have awakened." Elise's eyes flickered open. "Others?" "Affirmative. Signals originating from 3 separate sectors. Estimated distance, hundreds of light years." She smiled, weak but alive. "Then it wasn't just us. Earth's children are still out there." Rourke rose, looking out at the ruined stars. "What now?" Elise leaned back, her voice a whisper. "Now we hunt." And in the cold expanse beyond the rift, far from the wreckage of war, new stars flickered to life, signals echoing across centuries. Humanity was no longer forgotten. They were awake, angry, and coming home. The fires of the rift still burned when the first human convoy arrived, broken ships limping through the radiation storms, drawn by the pulse of Elise Marrow's transmission. They came from every direction, answering the ancient call for Terra. Some were survivors of long-forgotten colonies. Others were mercenaries, pirates, or deserters who carried fragments of human bloodlines mixed through generations of exile. Yet when they saw the emblem of the United Earth Directorate stitched on Elise's uniform, they saluted like soldiers before a commander who had never died. Humanity, scattered and diluted, was finding its voice again. The Retribution floated at the center of it all, her hull still scorched from the blast that had wiped out half the Zultak armada. Repairs were slow, her engines running on patched conduits and prayers. But the ship had become a symbol, proof that Deathworlders could defy extinction. From the observation deck, Elise watched the newcomers dock with the remains of Bastion Theta, each vessel bearing the scars of survival. She saw children helping weld broken panels, veterans teaching them how to handle rifles too heavy for their hands. For the first time in centuries, humans were rebuilding not as refugees, but as a people reborn from fire. Rourke approached quietly, carrying a datapad filled with tactical reports. "We've counted 47 operational ships," he said. "Another 20 are salvageable. The rest? Scrap and ghosts." He paused, looking at her. "But they'll follow you anywhere, Elise. You've given them something no one else could." She didn't turn from the viewport. "Hope?" He shook his head. "Purpose." Word of the Perseid Rift massacre had spread beyond containment. Entire worlds under Zultak dominion rose in rebellion. Slaves refused orders. Colonists sabotaged refineries. Even Union worlds that had once worshipped the Zultak's strength began to question it. In response, the High Command unleashed new horrors. Purge fleets armed with experimental weapons and mercenaries drawn from the darkest corners of the galaxy. But vengeance had already grown roots too deep to be cut. And at its core stood Elise Marrow. Vec Thul, his arm replaced by a mechanical prosthetic grafted from human and Corthan tech, stood by her side during the first council of the Resurgent. Around the holotable sat representatives from every surviving human group. Admiral Chen of the Titan Rex, Captain Asha Rami from the Scavenger Fleet, and Rourke representing the 7th Corps. Their holograms flickered against the dim light. Harrow projected the galactic map, red lines marking Zultak strongholds, blue pulses marking human resistance pockets. "The enemy controls 3/4 of known space," the AI intoned. "However, their command structure is fractured. Losses in the rift have triggered internal dissent." "Optimal strike window, 30 cycles," Chen grunted. "You're suggesting we attack their capital worlds?" "Negative," Harrow replied. "We cut the arteries first. Fuel depots, supply chains, relay stations. Death by 1,000 cuts." Elise nodded slowly. "Make them bleed before we burn them." Rami leaned forward. "And when they retaliate?" Elise's eyes hardened. "Then they'll find we've been waiting for that too." The meeting ended with one consensus: Operation Iron Veil. A campaign to strike deep within the Zultak's industrial systems while spreading the illusion of fractured command. Harrow would flood their networks with false intelligence, while human fleets operated as ghosts, hitting from shadows and vanishing before response fleets could lock coordinates. Rourke was given command of the assault groups. Vec Thul oversaw alien recruitment, smugglers, outcasts, even exiled nobles who had grown tired of the Empire's cruelty. For weeks, Bastion Theta buzzed like a hive preparing for war. When they finally launched, the galaxy shifted. The first target was Ravoth Station, a core fuel depot orbiting a gas giant. The humans struck under cover of the planet's magnetic storms, their ships invisible to scanners. Rourke led the assault team through the maintenance shafts, planting charges along the main reactor. They left messages scrawled in human blood. "Remember Saul." When the station exploded, the resulting energy wave crippled 2 sectors and sent the Zultak fleet scrambling. Before they could regroup, another station fell. Then another. Each time the attackers left the same message. Soon the words spread through every outpost, every slave camp, every officer's quarters. Haunting, simple, unrelenting. Remember Saul. The terror wasn't just military, it was psychological. Harrow hacked broadcast networks and replaced official propaganda with images of Earth's last moments. The burning oceans, the screams, the ships that fled into darkness. The message was clear: humanity had not forgotten, and vengeance would come for all who had profited from their ashes. The Zultak called them monsters. The Union called them a contagion. But to the oppressed billions watching from below, they were something far greater. They were justice. Amid the chaos, Elise's command grew heavier. With every victory came new losses. Entire crews vanished in hyperspace ambushes. Civilians died when Zultak retaliations targeted rebel planets. Harrow calculated casualty rates with chilling precision, But Elise stopped reading the reports. She spent her nights walking the observation corridors, staring at the stars she was slowly turning into graveyards. Vekthul found her there one evening, a flask of Korthan spirits in his hand. "You're burning the galaxy," he said, "and yourself with it." She took the flask without looking up. "That's the cost." "You've already paid it 100 times," she smiled faintly. "Then what's one more?" But Harrow had begun to notice something strange. Anomalies in the enemy's communication matrix. Buried deep within encrypted Zultak data was a recurring signal, faint but human in design. The AI brought it to Elise. "It repeats every 24 hours, Harrow said. Pattern consistent with Directorate encryption, though altered beyond recognition. Origin unknown." Elise leaned closer. "Could it be another fleet?" "Possibly, or something older." Her heart tightened. "Trace it. Coordinates lead to the Talon Expanse. No known routes. Extreme radiation." Rourke entered the command deck mid-conversation. "That's suicide," he said. "No ship goes near Talon." Elise's eyes stayed on the flickering signal. "Then it's exactly where I need to go." They departed under false signatures, leaving command to Rourke and Chen while she, Vekthul, and a small crew took the Retribution into the Expanse. The journey was brutal. Radiation storms tearing through shields, gravitational rifts twisting navigation. Harrow's systems strained under the interference, its voice glitching like whispers in a haunted tomb. But through it all, the signal grew stronger. At the edge of the Expanse, they found it. A planet-sized construct orbiting a dying sun. Its surface gleamed like obsidian metal, seamless, ancient, and unmistakably human. Vekthul stared in awe. "By the stars, what is that?" Elise's voice trembled. "A Dyson fragment." "An arc," Harrow confirmed it. "Designation, Project Heliarch. Origin, Earth Directorate. Last log entry dated 347 years ago. Eidolon revealed that fragments of human DNA, preserved within the Heliarch, could seed entire worlds. Combined with advanced nanotech, it could terraform barren planets and restore lost biomes within decades. It was hope in physical form, a chance to rebuild Earth or something greater. But it came with a warning. "The Zultak Empire has already detected my energy output. They are coming. If I fall, humanity's last legacy dies with me." Elise stood in silence, torn between vengeance and salvation. To defend the Heliarch meant abandoning the campaign. To lose it meant condemning their species to extinction once more. She turned to Vekthul. "If we protect this, we can rebuild." He nodded. "And if you destroy their empire, you can make sure no one ever threatens it again." She closed her eyes. "Then we do both." They fortified the Heliarch, rerouting its defenses, awakening drones that hadn't moved in centuries. Harrow synchronized its systems with Eidolon, creating a network of sentient AIs bound by one purpose: protect humanity's rebirth. When the Zultak scouts arrived, Elise knew the full fleet wouldn't be far behind. She opened a channel to Rourke. "We found something," she said. "Something worth every drop of blood we've spilled." He didn't ask what it was. He just said, "Then we'll hold the line." The final transmissions from the Talon Expanse showed the Retribution surrounded by enemy signatures, thousands of ships closing in. Harrow's final message before the signal cut was a single line: "For Terra, for tomorrow." Then the stars went silent again. Rourke watched the feed end, his hands clenched around the console. He turned to the fleet assembled at Bastion Theta, eyes burning with fury. "You heard her," he said. "We don't stop. We don't surrender. We fight until there's nothing left of them." And across the stars, the Deathworlders prepared to strike once more. Not just for vengeance, but for the future Elise had died to protect. The fleet gathered in the broken light of the rift, ships drifting in solemn silence, their hulls still painted with the scars of battles past. The last message from Elise Marrow had traveled through every comm network faster than any order could. 3 words that bound the human species tighter than blood. For Terra. For tomorrow. No one knew if she still lived. The Retribution was gone, its beacon snuffed out in the maelstrom of the Talon Expanse. But her voice, her defiance, had become something more than a commander's command. It was a prophecy. Humanity's vengeance was no longer led by one woman. It had become a storm with no center. Rourke stood at the head of the resurgent council, his face lined from radiation burns and sleepless nights. Before him, holographic projections flickered, the faces of captains, engineers, and soldiers scattered across the stars. "She bought us time," he said, his voice gravel and steel. "The Zultak think they ended us in the expanse, but they've only given us a target. We're taking everything she built and driving it straight into their heart." No one argued. There was nothing left to debate. The Talon signal had confirmed what they all suspected. The enemy had discovered the Heliarch. If it fell, humanity's legacy would vanish forever. The resurgent fleet had one mission: strike first, strike hard, and never stop. Bastion Theta, once a graveyard, now pulsed with new energy. Harrow's backup corps had survived the blast, rebuilt by human engineers into a spectral intelligence that haunted the corridors. Its voice was colder now, stripped of the warmth Elise had coaxed into it. "Fleet status operational," it reported. "Estimated survival probability for the upcoming campaign, 7%. Rourke smirked at the odds. Then we're right on schedule. The plan was simple in design, suicidal in execution. Human fleets would stage simultaneous assaults across 5 sectors to split the Zultak's defenses. When their armadas scattered, Rourke's flagship, the Vigilant Dawn, would lead a direct strike into the expanse to extract what remained of the Heliarch. No one expected to return. The first wave hit the Zultak Empire like thunder. Entire communication grids went dark, as Harrow's signal viruses infected their networks, turning command protocols into gibberish. Rami's scavenger fleet hijacked freighters and redirected them into collision paths with orbital foundries. Chen's warships detonated fuel depots that burned for days, lighting the void with blue fire. The Zultak's disciplined fleets became chaos, fighting phantoms where none existed. And through that chaos, Rourke carved a path straight toward the Talon expanse. When they reached the outer rim, the sensors showed what the galaxy had feared to imagine: an armada the size of a continent. Thousands of Zultak vessels encircled the expanse, guarding the massive construct that now pulsed with stolen light. Elise's discovery, the Heliarch, was alive, but corrupted. Rourke stared at the readings. "They're draining it," he muttered. Vekthul, his mechanical arm humming, studied the display. "They're feeding its power into their own networks. If they succeed, they'll control every AI, every machine built on human code." Harrow's projection flickered beside them. "Including me." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Then we cut their throat before they finish." The fleet advanced under stealth drives cobbled from scavenged tech and pure desperation. They slipped through the debris fields, avoiding patrols until the first cruiser spotted them. A plasma barrage screamed across the void and the silence shattered. The Vigilant Dawn fired back, its rail cannons tearing through shields like claws through silk. All at once, the resurgent armada emerged from the shadows, ships held together by welding scars and willpower, screaming vengeance into the dark. Rourke's voice echoed across every comm channel. "For Elise! For Earth!" Thousands of throats answered as one. The battle was chaos and beauty. Human frigates darted through enemy formations like knives, dropping magnetic charges that turned Zultak engines against themselves. Drone swarms hacked into targeting systems, forcing friendly fire across their lines. Harrow manipulated gravity wells, collapsing them into miniature singularities that devoured destroyers whole. Yet for every enemy that burned, 3 more replaced it. The Zultak fought with machine precision and monstrous resolve. Their flagship, the Dominion Spear, loomed at the heart of the fleet. A vessel miles long, its core powered by the stolen energy of the Heliarch. Rourke stared at the readings, jaw clenched. "That's where she died," he whispered. The idea that Elise's remains, or worse, her ship, had been consumed to power that monster filled him with a fury he could barely contain. "We end it there," he said. "All guns, full burn." The Vigilant Dawn led the charge. Hull plating peeled under enemy fire, decks shook, alarms screamed. Vekthul's team rerouted power manually, sparks flying around him as his mechanical hand fused conduits together. Harrow's disembodied voice guided firing sequences, predicting enemy movements seconds before they occurred. When the fleet broke through the outer line, the Dominion spear filled their view like a dark sun. Its cannons turned toward them, each shot capable of vaporizing cities. Rourke didn't flinch. "Aim for the mouth," he said, "and make it choke." They hit it hard. Rail slugs punched through the outer hull, followed by boarding pods carrying the 7th Corps. Rourke led them himself, armored in the matte black plating of an old Directorate combat suit. They breached the hangar bay under a hail of plasma, advancing through smoke and blood. The corridors were alien and familiar all at once, architecture built by conquerors but crawling with the remnants of human technology. Screens flickered with corrupted code. A single phrase kept flashing amid the static. "Marrow protocol active." Rourke felt something cold twist in his chest. "She's here," he said softly. "She left something behind." The fighting grew savage. Every corner turned into close-quarters combat. Jultak warriors towered over humans, their exoskeletons glinting like obsidian. But they fell one by one to the feral precision of Deathworld soldiers. When Rourke's team reached the core chamber, they froze. There, suspended above the pulsing reactor, was the Retribution, or what was left of it. Her hull split open, her systems wired directly into the Heliarch conduit, and at the center, surrounded by cables and light, was Elise Marrow. She was alive, or something close to it. Tubes ran into her chest, her skin ghostly pale under the glow of blue energy. The machinery pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Harrow's voice crackled in Rourke's helmet, almost reverent. "Captain Marrow detected. Neural signature active within the Heliarch mainframe." Rourke tore off his helmet, voice breaking. "Elise, it's me." Her eyes fluttered open, faint and unfocused. "Isaac?" she whispered. "How long?" He grabbed her hand, cold as steel. "Too long." The Heliarch's AI, Eidolon, spoke through the chamber's speakers, its tone strained. "Her body sustains the network. She is the link between human and machine. If disconnected, the system will collapse." Vekthul scanned the readings. "She's powering it with her life." Elise's lips trembled into a weak smile. "I told you I'd keep fighting." Rourke shook his head fiercely. "We can save you." She looked past him, at the battle raging beyond the viewport, the fleets colliding in fire and silence. "Save them instead." The Dominion spear began to shudder. Jultak reinforcements were breaching through the lower decks. Over the comms, Harrow's fragmented voice cut in. "Enemy counteroffensive imminent. Fleet integrity below 30%. Rourke made his choice. "Vekthul, plant charges. We're blowing this ship." The alien hesitated. "And the Heliarch?" "We take what we can and bury the rest." As they worked, Elise spoke again, weaker now. "Eidolon can rebuild anywhere. Upload the seed. You'll have what you need to start over." Harrow coordinated with the ancient AI, siphoning fragments of its data into compressed drives. "Transfer complete," the AI confirmed. "Human genetic, cultural, and technological archives secured." Rourke knelt beside her as the reactor's hum deepened into a roar. "You don't have to die here." She smiled faintly. "I already did." The deck trembled violently. Explosions cascaded through the ship. Jultak soldiers poured into the chamber, firing wildly. Vekthul went down first, his mechanical arm still clutching the detonator. Rourke dragged Elise from her restraints, carrying her toward the escape pods. Harrow's voice screamed in their ears. "Structural collapse imminent." He barely made it to the pod bay before the floor split open beneath him. Flames and debris swallowed everything. The last thing Rourke saw before darkness claimed him was Elise's face, calm, resolute, as she pressed the detonator in Vekthul's lifeless hand. The explosion that followed tore the Talon expanse apart. The Dominion spear, the Zultak armada, the corrupted Heliarch, all vanished in a supernova of light. For weeks afterward, no signals emerged from that region of space. The Union declared it a dead zone. The Zultak called it divine punishment. But among the scattered human fleets, whispers spread that someone had survived. Months later, a distress signal was picked up near the frontier. It carried a simple human code and a woman's voice. Faint, fractured, but unmistakable. This is Captain Elise Marrow. Heliarch fragment intact. Humanity endures. The signal faded into static, but it was enough. The message traveled faster than ships, faster than fear. Across the galaxy, Deathworlders rose again, armed with the fire of vengeance and the hope of rebirth. Rourke awoke on a barren moon, half buried under wreckage. His armor was cracked, lungs burning. Harrow's backup module flickered weakly on his wrist. "She detonated the core," it said softly. The Heliarch seed escaped through subspace. "We are not alone." He looked up at the shattered sky, the faint glow of distant explosions painting the horizon. "Then she did it," he whispered. "She won." He stood, broken but alive, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the seeds of Earth drifted through the void, carrying with them the memory of a world that refused to die. The Deathworlders had come not for glory, not even for victory, but for vengeance. And in their vengeance, they had forged the beginning of something greater. When the Union sent their scouts to survey the ruins months later, they found carvings burned into the rocks of that moon. Words etched by a human hand. "We remember Sol. We are coming home." Rourke spent 3 days walking across that dead moon before he found what was left of the Vigilant Dawn. The ship was half buried in gray dust, her once glorious hull now a twisted skeleton of carbon and ash. The stars above were silent. No signals, no friendly pings. It was as if the galaxy itself had gone quiet to mourn. Inside he found survivors, 20, maybe 30, soldiers, engineers, and scavengers, who'd crawled out of the wreckage to build shelters from torn metal and memory. They looked up when he entered, eyes wide, hope flickering like a dying flame. One of them whispered, "Captain?" He nodded, voice hoarse. "Not anymore. We're just people now." But in that moment, even he knew it wasn't true. They were more than survivors. They were the last bearers of vengeance fulfilled. The Heliarch signal had vanished with Elise, yet echoes of its transmission still pulsed faintly in the subspace channels. Harrow's fragment, the AI sliver embedded in Rourke's wrist, confirmed it each night. "Residual data detected," it would say. "Heliarch pattern dispersing across multiple sectors." It meant she'd done it. Elise had fragmented the Heliarch's knowledge into seeds, scattering them like starlight into the void, each carrying humanity's memory, language, and will to fight. Somewhere those fragments were awakening. The Deathworlders had not died. They had multiplied. On the 12th night, the stars above the moon shimmered unnaturally. One by one, streaks of fire tore across the sky. Escape pods, debris, and something else entirely. Rourke and his people scrambled to recover what they could. Most pods held corpses. A few carried survivors. One, however, was unlike the others. When they cracked it open, they found a crystalline core pulsing with soft blue light. Harrow's voice trembled. "Heliarch fragment confirmed. Identity signature. Marrow." The camp went silent. Rourke fell to his knees, brushing dust from the crystal's surface. Inside, faint holographic patterns flickered. A woman's face, her eyes calm and endless. "Elise." Her voice emerged, faint but resolute. "If you're hearing this, then the expanse is gone. I did what I had to. The Heliarch lives, though I do not. But you can finish what I began. Humanity's archives are scattered across the spiral. Find them, rebuild them, teach the stars who we were." Then her image dissolved, leaving behind coordinates and a single word. Eden. Rourke stared at the data, the ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. "You never stopped giving orders, did you, Captain?" he murmured. Around him the survivors straightened, weary but renewed. "We're going after it," he said. No one objected. They worked for months on that barren world, scavenging the Vigilant Dawn for parts, repairing thrusters with scraps of alien alloys. Food was rationed, oxygen filtered from toxic soil. Nights were filled with silence, days with sweat and determination. Harrow served as their navigator and historian, replaying fragments of human art and music to keep morale alive. Beethoven's symphonies, old folk songs from Appalachia, a child's laugh recorded on Earth centuries ago. The sound of it broke the hardest hearts. They were Deathworlders, yes, but they were still human, and humanity needed its ghosts as much as its guns. When the ship finally lifted off, it did so on wings that screamed and engines that burned unevenly. Rourke stood on the bridge, hand resting on the console where Harrow's interface pulsed faintly. "Set course for Eden," he said. "Let's go find our ghosts." The ship vanished into the stars, leaving behind the etched words on the moon's surface, a promise to the dead. The journey took them through what remained of the Union's fractured territories. The Zultak had not recovered from the destruction of the Expanse. Their fleets were scattered, their hierarchy broken. Rumors whispered of entire hives turning on one another. The Deathworlders' vengeance had not just destroyed their enemy, it had unbalanced the galaxy. Refugee colonies, human and alien alike, now drifted between systems, clinging to fragments of civilization. When Rourke's ship appeared on their scanners, many hailed it as a myth reborn. The Vigilant Dawn had become a legend, the ghost fleet that burned the Expanse. At a derelict outpost orbiting a gas giant, they found the first Heliarch seed, a sphere of light embedded in what used to be a mining array. When Harrow interfaced with it, images flooded the ship, cities on Earth before the wars, oceans shimmering under clean skies, children running through green fields. The crew fell silent as the projection filled the air. Some wept. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen their homeworld. Rourke stood motionless, jaw clenched, until the recording ended. "Download everything," he said softly. "We'll need it where we're going." Each seed they found added to their knowledge, fragments of science, art, and philosophy. Together they formed the blueprint for a reborn civilization. But with every discovery came new enemies. Remnants of the Zultak still prowled the outer sectors, hunting anything human. The Deathworlders fought them with feral precision, striking from the shadows, using tactics learned from centuries of desperate wars. Rourke led every battle personally, not because he sought victory, but because he refused to let another Marrow die under his command. One night, after a brutal skirmish near the ruins of the Vega Ring, Harrow spoke quietly. "You are not sleeping." Rourke stared at the star map, eyes hollow. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see her." Harrow hesitated, its voice almost human now. "Captain Marrow made her choice. You honor it every day you breathe." He gave a broken laugh. "She'd call that a waste of oxygen." For the first time in years, Harrow's synthetic tone softened. "Then don't waste it. Finish what she started." Months passed, and the coordinates led them to the edge of known space, a region untouched since the earliest human expansion. The system designated Eden's Rest was unlike any they had seen. Its primary star burned red gold, and around it orbited a lush, living world. Atmospheric readings confirmed it. Oxygen-rich, temperate, unclaimed. A perfect cradle. "She found it," Rourke whispered. "A place for us." They descended through golden clouds, the ship groaning as it entered the atmosphere. Below them stretched vast forests, deep oceans, and mountain ranges untouched by war. For the first time in centuries, humanity had found a world that didn't try to kill them. They landed in a valley surrounded by rivers and fertile plains. When Rourke stepped onto the soil, he removed his gloves and touched the ground with his bare hand. It was warm, alive. Around him, the crew began unloading supplies, setting up shelters, planting seeds. Children, born aboard the wrecked fleets, ran through the grass, laughing under open skies. Harrow projected a faint hologram beside him, the last recovered image of Elise Marrow. She stood as if watching them, wind in her hair, that same quiet strength in her eyes. "Welcome home," her voice echoed faintly. Years passed. The colony grew. They named it New Sol. The Heliarch's knowledge guided their rebuilding. Clean power from orbital arrays, medicine grown from engineered flora, architecture shaped to coexist with the land. The Deathworlders became settlers, farmers, teachers, and builders once more. Yet they never forgot. Each year, on the anniversary of the Expanse, they gathered beneath the stars and played the recording of Elise's final message. Children would ask who she was, and Rourke would answer simply, "She was the reason we're still here." As the settlement flourished, scouts ventured farther, seeking other seeds, other survivors. They found remnants of humanity scattered across the void. Small stations, sleeper ships, forgotten colonies that had endured in silence. One by one they joined under a new banner, the Reclaimed Union of Sol. The words sounded strange at first, but they carried weight. Humanity was not a memory. It was a movement. In time, Rourke grew old. His hair silvered, his scars faded, but his eyes never lost their fire. On his last night, he sat outside his cabin overlooking the valley. Harrow, now embodied in a crystalline core, floated beside him. "You should rest," it said. He smiled faintly. "I'm tired but not finished. There's something I want to hear." Harrow understood. It played the recording. The faint, fragile voice that had carried them through the void. "This is Captain Elise Marrow. Humanity endures." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, he felt peace. "Aye, Captain," he whispered. "We did." When morning came, the sun rose over the valley, painting the sky in gold and crimson. The colonists gathered to lay him to rest beside a river that shimmered like glass. Above his grave, they built a small monument, carved with the names of every Deathworlder who had fallen in vengeance and victory. At its peak, a simple phrase was etched into the stone: "For Terra, for tomorrow." Centuries later, travelers from distant worlds would come to New Sol and stand before that monument, listening to the wind whisper through the grass. They would ask about the Deathworlders, about the war, about the woman who became a legend. The colonists would tell them the story, not of conquest, but of endurance. How humanity, born from the harshest world in the galaxy, had turned vengeance into renewal. How they had come not for glory, not for domination, but for the justice owed to every fallen soul. And when night fell, the stars above New Sol would shimmer faintly, aligning in a pattern that some said resembled a woman's face, the last gift of the Heliarch's light. The Deathworlders had returned to the cradle of life, not as conquerors, but as keepers of a legacy carved in blood and hope. The galaxy would remember their wrath, but it would never forget their rebirth. The Deathworlders came not for glory but for vengeance, and in that vengeance they found their humanity once more.